Court. The Supreme Court has, over the years, narrowed the notion of a new fact more and more down, because they don't like reopening closed cases, because cases should be closed, and so on and so forth. So, for instance, a new fact has to be really new, hard evidence, like somebody saw somebody else killing Amber. But if a scientist has a different opinion about existing forensic evidence, that is a new opinion. That is not a new fact. So all the scientists in the world could agree that baby Amber died a natural death, but that is a new opinion. It is not a new fact. So there is no way you can reopen the case. Because the Dutch judges are right at the top, and they're independent, of course, and they have got the freedom to choose the experts they want, to choose to believe the experts they want, to tell the experts who they want, whose advice they want. They can tell those experts what they want to tell them. And they communicate to the experts by asking questions. The experts give answers. And that expert, and then they choose which experts' opinions they like, and they put them together. So, however, in the meantime, a lot had been going on, like on the street, as I'll tell you in a moment, briefly. And for some reason, the Advocate General to the Supreme Court, who's kind of the front door, sort of the guy who receives the letter and decides whether or not to send it in, he could see that there was no new fact in what I've just told you. However, he did actually charge a multidisciplinary medical investigation into the death of that first baby, where for the first time, many different medical experts of different disciplines could actually communicate to one another and had access to all the dossiers, all the information of the case. All of it. All that they wanted. At this point, Lucia was allowed out of jail. And this is extraordinary because this can sort of never happen. I mean, her legal situation is that she's in jail for life for murder. Anyway, this Advocate General got this investigation done. It gave actually very favorable for Lucia results, namely Amber's death could just as well have been a natural death. He proposes the case to be reopened, and this was the new fact which he gave to the Supreme Court. He managed to get the expert of the original trial who had said Amber had died of digoxin. He got that expert to agree with the new experts. Otherwise, it would not have been a new fact. If your conviction, if you send somebody to jail for life on the basis of opinion of one scientist, and that scientist says they changed their mind, then it's a bit shaky. And that was actually a new fact, which the Supreme Court had opened recently in order to allow another case to be reopened, where it was absolutely clear that it had to be done. And it was actually a novelty of them to have come up with the idea that an original expert changing his mind is not a new opinion, it is a new fact. So some originality and creativity going on there. Well, yes, I rush on. How many more minutes? 7, 5? Oh, okay. These slides are all on internet, so you can read them at your leisure in 2 minutes, 5 minutes. The case has now been reopened. Lucia is out of jail. This means you go right back to the beginning. It seems like the prosecution has learned nothing, because the public prosecution has charged an independent forensic science company to sketch an outline of some work which they might do, and this company, who likes to please the public prosecution, produced an enormous fat document saying all the kind of forensic researches which they would like to do in order to prove that Lucia did kill all these people. Of course, they didn't actually write that, but that was the point of it, of course. The judges actually should have said, sorry, there's nothing, everybody go home, it's finished. But actually they decided to follow this line of actually trying to find out the truth in a couple more of the cases, which is probably in the long run going to be a good thing. Some more remarks there. Okay. Okay, now I've got sort of 4 minutes and I want to say quite a lot of things, so I try to say the most important things I want to say. Statistics was very important in the beginning, but later the judges had said no statistical probability calculation was used. All the deaths and incidents were shown by incontrovertible scientific or medical evidence to be unnatural deaths. And yet, actually, from the beginning, when that book came out, it was actually statisticians who were kind of the first people who started moving things to force that case to be reopened. That sort of kind of like a parallel, a big public debate went on. And what was very important was actually to get the media to change sides. And this slowly worked. And there were all kinds of things happening. A very important thing which happened was, well, it was very important actually to make news, because journalists can only write articles when there's news. And if nothing happens, there's no news. But I knew a science journalist who wrote a nice article in Nature about this case, and actually did a very good job, I think, understanding the arguments and giving them fairly. And then the Dutch journalists saw that there had been an article in Nature about our case. This was news. Then it came on TV and so on. The legal establishment got very angry. People like me were accused of undermining the establishment, the foundations of our society, by leading people not to trust the rule of law anymore. The medical establishment has never said a word. Politicians never got involved. But slowly, public opinion, well, academic opinion and public opinion was won for Lucia. And at some point, key figures in the legal establishment were won for Lucia, because the beautiful thing, even about Dutch society, is that there is an overlap between the legal community and scientific community. There are people in the legal community who are also professors at universities and who are important in the legal community because they are professors at universities, and at their universities they're important because they're also important legal people, but they have to keep in good friends with their academic friends, and their academic friends can actually talk to them, and they are actually open to hear about facts. And that was a very important thing. Right, there's a petition, which we published. A Nobel Prize winner signed a petition. That was news. Then they started to get worried. Then we were attacked very bitterly. Okay, we were on some cartoons. A little bit about the statistics. Actually, I don't want to say too much about that now at all. I'll just say a little bit about the legal concept of irrefutable medical scientific proof of unnatural death. So there were all these deaths where, like, Lucia had been around, perhaps, and actually, when you die in a hospital and you've got a serious illness, right, your heart stops beating, so you're dead. But what is the cause of death? It's often very complex. It's very easy it's often sort of unknown, because it's so complex. You cannot say it was this, of course. I mean, you had some birth defects, and eventually everything went wrong, and eventually you died, but it's not sort of clear. And moreover, the precise moment you die is absolutely unpredictable. Absolutely unpredictable. Like, it could be today, it could be tomorrow, it might be next week. I mean, it might be now, it might be next week in these cases. So the deaths were unpredictable, and they did not have an easy explanation, so they were inexplicable, and then in legal jargon they could become suspicious if Lucia was there, and then they were unnatural, of course, if they were suspicious. And actually, for every single of all those babies and old people who Lucia was thought to have killed, every case separately, a majority of the medical experts consulted by the judges thought that the death was natural. But they could always find one who did think it was unnatural. Actually, in 2 cases, only one person thought the death was unnatural. And why? Because Lucia was there. Otherwise, he would have thought it was a natural death. So, what has happened there? That's the medical expert using his common sense statistical intuition, and it has become incontrovertible medical proof that this is an unnatural death. It gets worse, but I don't have much more time now. All right.